Boom. Kels, you're the first person to join us. Welcome. And welcome everybody on YouTube. Looks like today worked. Woo-woo! Hello, TikTokers. Thank you for the first heart on TikTok. And hello, YouTubers. We made it. No technical glitches today. How exciting is this? Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. Folks, the way we like to start is just to have everybody kind of say where you're all from in the comments, please. And hats. We still like the hats. But yeah, let everybody know where you're from in the comments. I always find that interesting. And it's fun to tell everybody else. Exactly. No errors today getting on. Today's going to be an easy day. I can just feel it. And we've got a lot of good news today, which is nice too. Because war news is not always good news. And there's a lot of good stuff today, I think. So that'll be good too. But yes, Florida, Colorado. Oh, Ukrainian in Colorado. That's interesting. Dasha. Scotland, Ireland. Glad to see some of the Europeans and the other non-Americans can make it. I know the timing can be kind of bad. Just so you guys know, on the weekends, so far we've been doing 1 p.m. Eastern time on the weekends, Eastern time US, which is, I had that written down. UTC is 4 hours ahead of us. So 5 o'clock, 1700 UTC. Yeah, on the weekends. So hopefully that's a little better for all of you guys. Hello, Nebraska. But I'm going to start in a second because the TikTokers always come much quicker. Oh, and the other quick news is TikTok has fixed everything now. Not only do my lives work, but I can now, and thank you, Chris and Ted, I can now schedule lives. So this live was actually scheduled. So thank you, TikTok folks, or the big TikTok in the sky. And also all of you who found out because the live was scheduled. I'm very excited. I'm going to jump right in. You know, I felt like the other days I've been dragging it out too long. And since so many of you come on time, I don't want to drag out. So just a quick follow request. Obviously, follow me on YouTube and on TikTok. That would be nice of you. Beyond that, your gifts are, of course, well appreciated. On TikTok, all the little funny hats, you know I love. On YouTube, well, some people just put the super stickers, which are great, or the flowers on TikTok. But also, the super chats are quite useful on YouTube because, frankly, it helps elevate your question. I get a lot of questions from everybody back and forth. Oop, I'm going to wipe my little camera here on YouTube. And if you buy a super chat question, it at least elevates it, and I get to those first. So for what it's worth. All right, guys, I'm going to jump right in here. So top stories. The common theme with the news today from Ukraine, and again, been pretty good news across the board. But the actually, you know what? I'm going to do one other thing. Nah, I think it's okay. It's okay. I was going to say my light's a little strong here, but I've always got to go back and forth. Good enough. Good enough. So the common theme today, two common things. One, Ukrainian counteroffensives. The Ukrainians are striking back. And two, the Russians are running out of supplies. Now, we've known about the Russian supply problems for a while, right? They've talked about that for a while now. What is interesting is, well, let me go through the stories because all of these kind of come together with these stories here. So first of all, great news today about the, oops, I'm going to wipe my screen one more time on my computer. I've got my computer folks in front of me, boom, for YouTube, and then my camera is right there for TikTok. So the news today out of southern Ukraine, very interesting. The Russian ship, the warship Orsk, blew up this morning at 7 a.m. There's great video of it. There's drone footage. There's actually several different angles, but one of them is a drone footage from a local Ukrainian that I was able to find on YouTube. I posted a bit for you guys. You may have also seen it on the news. I saw it on CNN earlier. And basically, this was a huge resupply ship. It was bringing in weapons, but it also was bringing in vehicles. It was seen, for example, well, this is actually sort of the most interesting part about it. The Russians were bragging, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. The Russians were bragging. They had all their news crews there. This is a Ukrainian port in the town of Berdyansk. The Russians had taken over the port, and they brought in their huge warship with armored personnel carriers, weapons. It can take tanks. It can take troops. It can transport everything. And this is the big resupply effort the Russians were doing in the south. Because you know how you've heard about how the Russians have been low on supplies. The Ukrainians have really, two things. One, the Ukrainians have destroyed the Russian supply lines. Two, the Russians have done just a hideous job of resupplying their troops. So their troops aren't getting food and water. Their troops aren't getting ammunition. Their troops aren't getting other weapons. And they're not getting fuel. And they need to refuel their vehicles like every day or two. And they're not getting fuel. So this vehicle, this orcs, I keep calling it orcs like from Lord of the Rings. This Orsk war ship was going to solve every problem. The Russians bragged about it on TV. Well, this morning at 7 a.m., it blew up. I mean, it blew up. This thing's gone. There's great drone footage of this. It blew up so badly that 2 other warships near it had to pull away from it as quickly as possible because they caught fire too. An ammo, sort of a collection of ammunition there on port blew up as well. And there was something else I saw that also, a fuel terminal. There was a fuel terminal that they were using to refuel their ships and cars and everything else. It blew up too. The Ukrainians aren't saying what happened. Smartly so, because they don't want to tell the Russians how they blew it up. Pretty much everybody thinks the Ukrainians blew it up, and the Ukrainians aren't saying they didn't. It's always possible it was Russian sabotage. It's always possible the Russians screwed up, but who knows? Bottom line is, it was a huge loss for the Russians, not just a public relations loss, because the Russians were bragging about this boat just 3 days ago, which frankly also makes you wonder if that put a target on it, right? The Russians made the cardinal sin of putting this boat on TV and saying, look at our big boat taking over Ukraine. And of course, the boat gets blown up. There you go. But the other thing is it was resupplying their troops. And we know the Russians have been having resupply problems. So this was a very good example, and call name, thank you for that. This was a very good example of the 2 themes I told you about today: the Ukrainians striking back and the Russian supply problems. Okay. Now, second issue. This is a really interesting one too. This one we'll have to see over the next few days. I've been reading a lot of different analyses of it. Basically, the Ukrainians have successfully been pushing back north of Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital. Now, you remember, you've got Ukraine. Kyiv is in the north, very close to Belarus, very close to Russia. And the Russians, came down from both sides, from Belarus and from Russia, and were trying to encircle Kyiv. They wanted to do to Kyiv, the capital, what they've been doing to Mariupol in the south, right? Where they surround the town and just bomb it with artillery, kill everybody, knock out all the residential buildings, everything, right? Well, the Russians so far, and it's been a month now, they thought the Russian plan was that within 3 days, they were going to take Kyiv, the capital, and the war would be over. Well, we're a month in. The Russians were only able to get about, I would say, less than halfway surrounding Kyiv on the north, right? The south, totally open. They couldn't get to. And then a couple days ago, things start going bad for them. It was stalemated for a while, but started going bad because the weather started warming up. So Ukraine was freezing. It was winter. The land was hard. So land that you can drive tanks on, for example. Now it's spring. It's a marsh. It's wet. It's muddy. The tanks are getting caught. The troops are getting caught. At the same time, a dam isn't functioning very well, and everybody thinks that this is something the Ukrainians did. The Ukrainians, it appears, opened up one of their dams, or they thank you for that, or they blocked it, whichever was going on up there, flooded the area north of Kyiv, the capital. So the Russians are now in a literal swamp. The Ukrainians then moved in, surrounded them, have been pushing them back at the same time. So 2 things are going. This is fascinating now. This is, again, the counteroffensive and the logistics. So what is happening now is the Ukrainians have surrounded the Russians in the north. According to General Hurtling, a former American general, very smart guy. He's sort of the general that I would follow the most in terms of believing what he says. Hurtling says it looks like 10,000 Russian troops in the north of Kyiv, that were part of this attack on Kyiv, have now been surrounded by Ukrainian troops. They at this point, he thinks they're either going to get caught as prisoners of war or they're going to get destroyed. 10,000 Russian troops. That's an incredible, first of all, it's a crazy number to take prisoner of war, but it's also a crazy number to destroy. But Hurtling says he thinks they're in serious trouble. The other analysis I was seeing today was from the New York Times, that not only are they being surrounded, but they're being pushed back. In other words, being pushed further to the north, right? Because remember, I talked about in the previous broadcast, we talked about this notion that soon the Russians were no longer going to be on the offensive, they were going to be on the defensive. Well, that's what's happening now. North of Kyiv, it looks like, there's a big fog of war problem, meaning, it's hard to know exactly what's going on community by community. The war is very messy, and it's not like we have spies in every city telling us exactly what's going on, right? But it looks like the Russians have been pushed further back north. And what that did, it now is moving the Russians out of artillery range of Kyiv, the capital. And remember what the Russians have been doing in the south. You've seen the videos of Kherson, Mariupol especially. Mariupol is the worst one, and Chernihiv in the north too. But Mariupol's the one, where they bombed the maternity ward of the hospital. They just all the horrible things they've been doing. Well, the Russian strategy has been, since they're doing so badly at the day-to-day of the war, has been just to bomb these cities, kill all the civilians, and blow up all the buildings. Well, you tend to do that with artillery because artillery is what they've got the most of. Well, the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back in the north to the point where they're going to be too far to use their artillery on Kyiv. So their whole strategy of taking Kyiv, the capital, of surrounding it, and then just bombing the bejesus out of it to try to make the Ukrainians, retire, make them surrender, is going to be over if the Ukrainians are successful in moving the Russians too far north. So then the final thing with this, and I'll move on to the next topic. Finally, what happens if the Ukrainians succeed in moving the Russians further north and the Russians then can no longer use their artillery? Now they've got to use cruise missiles. Now they've got to use their planes. Well, we know the Russians have not been doing a very good job with their planes, right? So the Russians are a little nervous about using their planes because they don't control the airspace. So their planes can get blown out of the sky. The Ukrainians have been doing a very good job, apparently, in air defense. In other words, shooting things up from the ground to knock the planes down. And cruise missiles are very expensive, and the Russians only have so many of them. So if the Russians now have to use their cruise missiles against Kyiv, the capital, instead of their artillery shells, it starts depleting the Russian supplies. So anyway, really good news across the board. Again, this is only one day or a couple days of the battle. The Russians still have a lot of manpower and weapon power to cause a lot of harm. They're still destroying cities in the south. But, as always, let's judge this on a curve. The Russians were supposed to win this war in 3 days, and now the Ukrainians actually have the Russians on the defensive. That's just amazing. Next topic, morale. This was an interesting quote I pulled from an article. This, I think, was from the New York Times today. And it was quoting, it was talking about how bad things are in the towns. And how, even though the Ukrainians are pushing back, like I said, a lot of people are dying. And people are escaping these towns and saying they're a disaster. Even the towns that it looks like the Ukrainians might have recaptured, they're a disaster. People are getting killed. Well, I thought, listen, I'm going to read you these 3 paragraphs because I read these 3 paragraphs and I took something totally different than, oh my God, it's a disaster. Listen to this. Vladimir, 66, a retired furniture factory worker who declined to offer his last name, walked out of Irpin, a northern suburb of Kyiv that the Ukrainians are saying they took back. I think it might be disputed, or maybe they did take it back, but either way, the Ukrainians look like they're doing better. Walked out of Irpin Thursday morning after his home burned down overnight. Nobody is putting out the fires, he said. My neighbor's home burned, and I saw sparks on my roof, and then my house started to burn. Lacking water to fight the fire, he could only watch. And this is the part where you're like, okay, maybe morale isn't so good, right? Listen to this quote from Vladimir. We should never surrender, he said. This is, mind you, a guy whose house just burned down because there's nothing left in the town to defend. The Russians are burning everything down. We should never surrender. We will never live under the Russians again. That is morale. That is fortitude. But I just thought that was very interesting as an indicator of where the Ukrainians are, even when their homes are burning down and they're now homeless. And they're not saying just let it be over. They're saying you did this. We're never going to surrender. We'll talk a little bit about the NATO summit. The ironic thing today is I don't think there was a lot of news from the NATO summit. I'm underwhelmed, frankly. I'll tell you what happened, but I'm less than thrilled about it personally. And I'm actually I'm not very happy about it as well, but I'll tell you why. A little water. So, number of things came from it, the news today. As you know, NATO was meeting in Brussels. Tomorrow, Biden is going out to Poland, probably going to meet with refugees. Will be interesting to see if Biden does a secret little visit across the border into Ukraine. I think it's possible. His staff may not want him to. I think he'd want to. We won't know until after it's over, but keep an eye on it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little Biden trip, but we'll see. Biden was asked about Putin going to the G20 summit later this year. The G20 summit of 20 of the largest economies in the world, including the EU, the European Union, and Vladimir Putin was invited by the Indonesians who are hosting it. The Indonesians said, basically, we don't care what he did. This is about economics, and we need him there. Well, the Australian Prime Minister already said, I'm not sure I want to be there with a war criminal. Biden said that he thinks Putin should be removed, should not be allowed. But if Putin is allowed, Biden wants Ukraine to be there as an observer, to have them there. Now, let's see what happens with the war. This isn't happening till the fall, but I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think I said this last night. The Russians are committing war crimes. Our governments have accused them of committing, not even accused. Our governments have determined that the Russians are committing war crimes. How do you have a war criminal there with you at one of these meetings where remember how all the leaders get together and they stand, and sometimes they put on their cute little costumes if it's in Asia or wherever. How do you all get together and do a smiling little photo op of all of you standing together with Putin, the war criminal, who just killed, God knows, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people he's killing in Ukraine? How do you do that? I don't think you do it. If you're Joe Biden, I don't think you can do that. And I think for a lot of the other Western leaders, they can't be seen with him. Let's see what happens. I think, at least as of right now, I could see a lot of Western leaders canceling on the G20 if Putin is for sure going, of them boycotting and saying, I can't be seen with him, because they can't be seen with him. They cannot do a photo op with this man. They can't. Other issues today. The additional sanctions, the U.S. sanctioned members of parliament in Russia. I think the Canadians did too. We're giving additional humanitarian aid to help Europe with the refugees. The U.S. announced we're going to take 100,000 refugees. These are all fine things. Again, I'm underwhelmed for a huge summit of 30 countries. It's okay. It's okay. We're activating a task force for identifying and dealing with weapons of mass destruction. Basically, NATO has a task force that's never been activated before that is used for identifying when weapons of mass destruction, when chemical, biological, nuclear weapons have been used. They go and they can investigate and determine if they've been used, who used them, where, what's the risk of it spreading, how do we contain it, etc. That's good. Again, I'm not overwhelmed by. Actually, as somebody said on TV the other day about another topic, he goes, I'm not underwhelmed, I'm whelmed. He goes, in other words, I'm not overwhelmed, I'm whelmed. Like, it's okay. So the White House also put out a statement saying that, if Putin used nukes, used tactical nuclear weapons, meaning the sort of smaller local nuclear weapons, the U.S. would get involved somehow. Thank you, DC. Would somehow get involved and, take on Russia, whatever. And that we would respond if Biden said today, if Putin uses chemical or biological. Again, I'm reading all of this and I'm listening to all this. And I'm going, yeah, we kind of knew that already. The White House had already said if Putin uses chemical, biological, or nuclear, that's going to change the game. So anyway, for a summit of all of our leaders, I'm underwhelmed. There was nothing about new weapons to Ukraine. Nothing. Zelensky today called out, the Ukrainian president called out today and asked NATO and said, I need more tanks. I need more planes. You've got, I forgot how many tanks he said you got, 20,000, whatever it is. Just give me some, give me 1%. Nothing from NATO. I thought NATO for sure, whether it was some planes or something big, I thought NATO for sure was going to come up with something big here. And they were going to announce something big that Ukraine was going to get. And what it ended up being was, so far, only NATO getting together to worry about itself, which is fine, but not actually NATO looking and saying, what more can we do to help Ukraine? That's not what I'm hearing out of the summit today. I'm only hearing NATO say, if there's an attack, how do we make sure it doesn't come into, how do we make sure chemical weapons don't drift over to us? How do we make sure there's enough troops in Poland that, Poland doesn't get attacked? Again, important things, but I was hoping there was going to be a little more attention to Ukraine. Now, the last issue I'm going to bring up, and then we can jump to questions. As I said, ironically, there was a lot of interesting news today, but there wasn't a lot of news. Like, I didn't think there was a lot of things to update you guys on. There's a new poll from the Associated Press, and I agree, Kate. I'll just highlight Kate's question. Or not question. Kate just wrote a comment. I wish people wouldn't just talk and we could do more for them. This is sad. I agree. And look, we are doing a lot for them. We are doing a lot. We are providing a lot of weapons. We're providing a lot of aid. I still think we're not doing enough. My take. So listen to this. There's a new poll in the U.S., Associated Press and NORC, and I forget what it stands for, but very august polling outfit. And the poll overall finds that Americans feel overall that Biden hasn't done enough to help Ukraine or to challenge Russia. Now, some of the details, I actually grabbed the poll so I can give you some. 56% of Americans overall, 43% of Democrats feel that Biden has not been tough enough in his response. Now, let me pull up the exact amount here. Okay, as always, Republicans are more critical, Democrats are less, but even Democrats, 53% of Democrats think Biden's response to the invasion has been just right. 43% of Democrats say it wasn't enough. So 53% of Democrats say Biden did enough. 43% say he didn't do enough. That's still kind of close for Democrats, right? Independents, 64% of independents say Biden didn't do enough. 25% say he's done enough. And Republicans are a little bit worse. 68% say he hasn't done enough. Now, has Biden done too much to help? 4%, 9%, 4%. So what is interesting to me is Republicans, okay, I know Republicans are going to probably be critical of Biden, but independents are very unhappy with him, and Democrats are not evenly split, but 53 to 43 to think Biden's done enough. Democrats should be in the 80 percentile thinking Biden has done enough. I think what we are seeing here is what I've been talking about from the beginning. I'll wrap up with this, and then we've got lots of time for questions. I think what we're seeing here is what I had predicted was going to happen. I kept saying that I felt like the U.S. is going to get involved in this war somehow, and NATO, not just by sending weapons, but at some point we're going to get physically involved in this war. We're going to get forced to. I think Putin's going to go so far. I'm not sure what it is, but it is going to be so obnoxious and offensive to our citizens, ours and yours abroad as well, that people are going to say, you've got to do something. I think we're already seeing that. I think that the poll numbers are showing that Biden is taking this as being that poll numbers are showing that people feel that Biden isn't doing enough, means they're getting very frustrated at what they're seeing. And again, I'll sort of end with this. Biden has said from the beginning, and all our leaders did, that sanctions were never going to deter Putin. No country has refused to go to war because of sanctions, but there still is this sense that the outrage is so much of what we are seeing the Russians do is so outrageous. What we're seeing the Ukrainians suffer from is so horrific that it feels like we're not doing enough and we want to do more. And that's something our leaders had better be careful with, because, again, politically, I'm on the side of doing more. I know it's dangerous. I know it's risky, but it's interesting that it seems to have slipped into the body politic, sort of the people overall, this sense of we haven't done enough. So, all right. That is my summary for today. As I said, that is my shortest summary yet, I think. We're going to hang till at least 8 o'clock answering questions. Usually I go till 8:15. And then we hang out and just chat. Thank you for that flag, especially. And hang on a second. Let me get my glasses. As always, you can post questions on each of these. The super chat questions are nice because they're also donations, which I appreciate because I'm doing this full time and it helps support my work. And even though I did see some little pro-Russian troll jump in on TikTok and say I'm being paid, the only people who are paying me are you guys. That's it. I get my TikTok money and my YouTube money from you guys, and my sorting hat for Harry Potter. So thank you all. But yes, and I'll put Richard's questions up. I am going to look anyway, and yep, Katie. I'm still going to answer questions anyway, but if you do a super chat question on YouTube, I will answer that first. Because we get so many questions, I can't get to all of them anyway, so I apologize, guys. Richard Fisher says, I'm surprised at the Republican numbers with their mouthpieces in the media being pro-Putin. That's very interesting. Yes. So what Richard's saying is surprising the Republicans think Biden isn't tough enough when, at least on Fox News, their evening show people, certainly Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, have been kind of anti-Ukraine and kind of pro-Putin. Not kind of. They've been very pro-Putin. What the poll was saying, Richard, which is interesting, is people don't feel like Biden's done enough, but the Republicans were still polling more than Democrats, saying they weren't sure they wanted us. They were more leery of getting involved in the war. So the Republicans are still got a little bit of this, do we want to get involved in this war? But they want us to do more, which is interesting. And maybe that's some of the party thing too, because as we've seen, I think in the last 4 years, the polling really changed in America. Republicans were typically the party that was very anti-Russian, anti-Soviet before that. And I don't want to say the Democrats were pro-Soviet, but the Democrats would have their peace wing or whatever that was a little more sympathetic, right? And that shift during the Trump years where Democrats were much more suspicious, much more distrustful, much more disliking Vladimir Putin, and Republicans ended up being more supportive. So that, I think now that a lot of I think now Republicans at least are gravitating back to their normal position where all Americans are pretty united thinking, Putin's not a good guy and what's going on is not a good thing. So as I said, I've been very happy to see the unity on both, in our country at least, Democrats and Republicans. I'm guessing the same thing for you guys abroad too, probably, right? That things have been pretty unified in your countries, left and right. Let me jump real quick. Yes, Richard there. Make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. And I did see Tony. Thank you, Tony, just for just simply making a donation. That was nice of you. Let me look on the TikTok, guys. I don't know. Somebody asked, why is Tucker Carlson taking that line? I really don't know. It's interesting. We had somebody, and for you guys abroad, Fox News is one of our big TV networks here. It tends to be conservative. Tucker Carlson is probably their most important host, their most famous, gets the most viewers, and has been very pro-Putin, very pro-autocrat in general. He's very pro-Urban as well in Hungary, but has been very anti-Ukraine and putting out a lot of the Russian lies about Ukraine, actually, which has been kind of crazy. He's been repeating them. And honestly, nobody's sure why. It's been very strange. So anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Fox, but Doc Remington asks, and then I'll jump back to TikTok again a sec. Wondering, although little was made public, actually important decisions were taken today at NATO. Same as today, there was an article that the Germany, I'm thinking GDR, Germany sent more weapons than the disappointing released numbers. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Actually, that's good to hear. So Doc Remington is saying it looks like more may have actually been done that they're not telling us. Now, hello, Ireland. That's always a possibility. I'm saying I believe you. That's always a possibility. That I guess that's one thing we've always got to consider is that our government is doing more behind the scenes they're not telling us about. I mean, honestly, I saw somebody today talking about the Russian ship that blew up, the huge warship that blew up in Ukraine, and they were basically saying, I wonder if, some Navy SEALs from any of our countries helped, for example. Because it was such a suspicious explosion. You've got a dock that's controlled by the Russians, and the Russian flagship, in essence, the ship they're bragging about, that just gets blown up out of nowhere. Suspicious in a good way, but interesting. Is it true that a large number of Russian soldiers are surrounded north of Kyiv? Well, Joshua, I started my talk talking about that. General Hurtling, one of America's former top generals, says he thinks they are. He said today that from the news he was seeing, and again, he's got his own sources because he was a top general, he thinks that the troops north of Kyiv have definitely been pushed back. Okay, so the Ukrainians are definitely on the offensive for now. The Russians have had to fall back further north, which is not good for the Russians. And because it looks like the Ukrainians flooded the north of the country with a dam. They opened their dam or did something that flooded the area north of Kyiv. It flooded the Russian troops. The Russian troops are stuck. Remember, they they stopped that convoy and then blew up a lot of it, the 40-mile long convoy. That thing is just gone. That thing it's gone nowhere. That convoy is useless. It's gone. It's done. So these troops have been isolated to start with. The Ukrainians now flooded them. They've surrounded them. And according to Hurtling said they're surrounded. He said, basically, he thinks in the next few days, they could either be captured or destroyed. And these are 10,000 Russian troops, which I think is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Tyson M. I appreciate that. Let's see what happens. And again, these things can change every day. But when Hurtling says that, who is again, very important American general, for him to say that means he's not just watching the news on CNN. He's talking to folks. Let me see what we've else got. Cecil or Cecil. Someday I'll figure out which your name is. Maj, can you get John Tony's question? I don't. Okay. I didn't see. Let me try to see if there's a Tony question that I missed there. Do you have opinions on General Jack Keene's comments on the Biden administration pressuring Zelensky to take a deal from Russia? I did not see that. I would not be surprised if at some point they do that, whether the Biden administration has been pressing Zelensky to take a deal. I will say this. I think the Biden administration, and frankly, all of our governments made a mistake in the beginning by underestimating the Ukrainians. Part of the argument I saw as to why our governments were not giving Ukraine the weapons in advance before the war, why we didn't want to do a peacekeeping mission, et cetera, was because we just assumed Ukraine was going to lose in 3 days. And guess what? We were wrong. So, I am worried at some point we will try to put pressure on Ukraine to agree to some bad deal with Russia. I hope we don't. In the end, it's the Ukrainians' choice. And honestly, for the safety of the rest of the world as well, I'm a little worried as to whether we can afford the Russians getting away with this in some way. The Russians need to get a seriously bloody nose out of this. Or I think Poland is in danger, and I think the Baltic states. Now, I'm guessing what you guys were trying to tell me is Tony was trying to submit a question and didn't actually submit it. Oh, here you go, Tony. Okay, I think I see it there. Yeah, I see. I'm sorry. Tony had submitted a super chat question on YouTube, but it didn't have the question in there. I'm sorry. I see it. I see the follow-up thing now. If the Russians are performing so poorly against a lesser matched enemy, how can we expect them to realistically attack another country? Aren't they already spread too thin? Yes. Yes. This is one of the crazy things with the Russians now making all these threats about Poland. We saw in the last couple of days, they've been threatening to go nuclear on us for starters, right? They threatened to attack Poland. This is like yesterday, the day before. They threatened to attack Germany. They threatened to attack Poland and Lithuania because they want to get this land bridge going over to Kaliningrad, which is this little Russian territory further west in Europe. And if the Ukrainians are beating the bejesus out of them, at best it's a tie, but we clearly know the Ukrainians have destroyed these people. And again, we'll see what happens with the Russians there, but it's bad what's happening to the Russians. If this is happening with the Ukrainians, how can Russia afford to open up a new front with NATO? Fighting even fighting NATO allies, but then bringing in the Americans too. But you're going to have the Germans, the French, the British, the Poles. The Norwegians, who apparently are very kick-ass in their own right. A NATO friend of mine told me, I was not aware, but he said, "Oh God, the Norwegians." He goes, "You don't mess with them." So it's insane that that Putin would truly want to open up another front, and there's no way the Russian military would want to. I think the Russian military has already been embarrassed to death. They've already been destroyed. They've lost probably 15,000 men, if not more, dead, which means probably 30,000 wounded. Horrific what's happened there. And it would be insane for them to open another front with NATO to go to war with us. And again, this whole thing about Putin wanting to go nuclear, that's just, I think they're lying. I think they're doing it to freak us out, because this was the whole point of Russia versus America, the nuclear arms race, the Cold War, and all of that. There is the theory that was used, or not even the theory, I forget what you want to call it. The whole building block of the Cold War was this MAD strategy, MAD, mutual assured destruction, meaning the Russians and us both knew that if we launched nukes at them, they'd launch nukes at us and we'd all die. So it stopped us from using our nukes, but it also helped stop us from going to war against each other in general, because we didn't want any war to possibly become a nuclear war. Well, that still stands today. So every time I see Putin talk about using our nukes, I'm going, dude, we've got thousands of nukes too. You know what I mean? Like, it would be the end of the world if we all use nukes. It's not like you launch them and we all go, oh, well, we lost Chicago. There's something, all Putin can do to win this, and by win it, I mean scare us into not acting, is convince us that, oh, this is cute. Sorry, dog, you're out of luck. My dog is in her bed, but about 10 feet away, and she knocked her blanket off. And she taught me early on that she makes this like noise when the blanket's off and she wants it put on top of her. Sorry, kiddo. Don't look at me. Now she's looking at me. I can't help you. I'm like wired in here and everything. Oh my God. I'm getting the look of death from this dog. Well, we'll see. Maybe when the clock ticks 8 o'clock. We'll see. If she guilts me, I'm taking a quick break and moving her blanket because the dog guilts me. In any case, yeah. So, I think it's total BS. I think Putin is trying to convince us. Good. She's moving to another bed. Perfect. I think Putin is trying to convince us that he's crazy and that he's going to attack. And he's going to go nuclear. What will he do? And that's supposed to scare us from getting involved and helping Ukraine any further. And I think that's what's going on, because, as Tony said, it would be insane for them to open up another front. It just makes no sense. Okay. Yep. We had that from Doc. Okay. did get Tony's question. All right. Cecil. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Tony, I've got it now. Thank you for that. Sorry about that. Oops, sorry, just scrolling down. Jay Goots, thank you very much. Just scrolling through the super questions. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, Alyssa says, thank you for covering this, meaning the Ukraine situation. She's writing this on YouTube. Had great-grandparents flee Ukraine in the 30s after the Russians killed their family. They never let anything red into the house after that. Wow. Jeez. Yeah, in the 30s, I mean, the 30s was the great famine, Stalin's famine killing, I don't even know. I know the numbers are disputed, but it's millions and millions of people, especially in Ukraine. I mean, horrific what they did, intentionally letting people starve to death, really bad. Yeah. So, no, my pleasure covering this because I have no connection to Ukraine, but I've taken this very personally. Yeah, that's what I was saying too. Richard said, would have been great to see that Russian ship that got bombed in the south being towed away by a Ukrainian farmer. I'm waiting for someone to do that video. Like a Ukrainian tractor tugboat kind of pulling it away. Another question from Christian894. Do you think there's something big happening behind the scenes we don't know about, such as a team to take out Putin? Yes and no, not to take out Putin. I think, and people have asked this a lot, it's too risky for us to try to take out Putin. It's too risky, meaning to kill him. It's too risky. If we fail, then we have declared war. And I mean, trying to kill the leader of Russia is, it's pretty bad. I mean, their response would be severe to that. I think we'd be more than happy if somebody in Russia tried to do it. Now, the interesting question becomes, what if the Russian military or somebody in the Russian FSB, their version of the CIA, reaches out to us and says, we'd like help getting rid of him? Would we help? I mean, that would be a very tricky thing. And my guess is, in part, it would depend on whether we thought we had not a chance, whether we thought it would work. Because again, you just don't want to get caught doing that. Or worse, it works, but it still gets exposed. And then whoever takes over for Putin declares war on America and the West. So I don't see that happening. I do think, like I said, and now I'm going to go to a TikTok question next. I do think you've got the possibility of, for example, that boat that blew up this morning, the Russian boat, did some Western intelligence help in some way, right? Is Western intelligence helping the Ukrainians guide some of their missiles and things? Maybe. Is Western intelligence helping listen in to some of the generals on the phone calls and helping the Ukrainians pinpoint, right, that we believe 5 Russian generals have been killed now in the field? Did Western intelligence help the Ukrainians find those generals to knock them out? Maybe. So I would not be surprised if some of that stuff's going on that we don't know about, that we're helping, but we're doing it in ways that we're being quiet because we don't want the Russians to know and then get really ticked off. Let me see here. Well, I mean, we should not be. Holly asked, how concerned do you think we should be about food shortages? I don't think we should be concerned about food shortages in the West. We should certainly be concerned about food shortages in Russia, in Ukraine. I was just reading today, in Kherson, Kharkiv. In Kharkiv in the north, I think it was in Kharkiv in the northeast, the second largest town, 70% of the people are now on food aid. And I'm not sure what they mean by that, but I think it means that these sort of, the city or whomever, the government has put together, they're making food for people and getting it to them because people don't have access to food now. 70% of the population, that's bad. A number of towns around the country, I read, also have got about 4 days of food left, and then they're out of food and they're starving. So that's become a huge problem for Ukraine. For us in the West, the issue is, we talked about this the other night. Somebody was weighing in that knew more about it, but Ukrainian wheat, but also Russian wheat. Ukrainian wheat is not getting planted right now. So that's going to be off the market. That's going to affect some wheat prices. Russian wheat, I read, is also not getting out there. I want to say because of the trade boycott, some of it's getting tied up so that they're expecting wheat prices to go up significantly worldwide. So it may not be a matter of us not having enough wheat, but the food prices could go up significantly. Yes, this was a funny one, I thought. Jay Goots, is it true the Russian army has been told to end the war by May 9th? That's what I read today, that the Russians were like putting out an edict telling their troops to end the war by May 9th. And I mean, that would be 6 weeks from now, I guess. the word hubris comes to mind. It's a wonderful word in English, hubris. I'm assuming it's a Latin word, but it means pride, but pride in a just ridiculously over the top. This would be Russian hubris, saying, oh yeah, we're doing so well that we're actually moving up the timetable and telling our guys, you know what, 6 weeks, we want this done, boys, go get it done. I mean, these guys are lucky in 2 weeks if they're not starving to death, a lot of these troops on the Russian side, 6 weeks. So it is true from what I've heard, and it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. Another question. Apologize if you touched on this already. Would sanctions on Belarus make a difference in terms of how they're aiding Russian troops? Probably. We did not touch on this. Probably not. Now, the concern. All right, step back again. Belarus, country to the north. Okay. You've got Ukraine. Northwest, you've got Belarus above it. Northeast, you've got Russia above it. Belarus has not invaded Ukraine yet, but it's run by a dictator, Lukashenko, who's a puppet of Putin. Putin's helped keep him in power. And the Russians brought troops through Belarus and then down so that the Russians were able to invade through Belarus and make that another front in the war so that there were multiple parts they were coming at the Ukrainians from, right? Now there's been talk in the last few days, concern as to whether Belarus will actually enter the war. Thank you. Will send in troops, maybe 20,000 troops, whether they would be to go after Kyiv, the capital, whether they'd be to cut off Western Ukraine, Lviv, and that whole area from Poland, because we believe a lot of weapons and humanitarian aid are probably coming in through Poland by land. The problem is, there's already a lot of sanctions on Belarus to start with because it's run by a dictator. I mean, it's the guy's nuts. There would be huge sanctions if they entered the war. The problem is the thing we always bring up is sanctions don't tend to stop people from getting in wars, especially when you've got a dictator. The dictator he's a dictator. He doesn't really care if his people are suffering to a degree. I mean, unless it gets him overthrown. So I don't think he cares at all about the sanctions. And what he cares about, by the way, Vladimir Putin has saved his butt repeatedly to keep him in power in the last couple of years when there were uprisings at home, this kind of stuff. So he needs Putin to keep him alive and to keep him in power. That's more important to him than his people suffering from sanctions. Vlad's going to say, I'm losing and I need you, or I'm going to get rid of you and get somebody else who's going to help me. So that's the issue there. Rebecca, are Finland and Sweden going to join NATO with troops trained together? Well, Putin after on that. This is kind of interesting. Finland and Sweden are not members of NATO. It's always kind of interesting to look and see like who is and isn't a member of the European Union, who is and isn't a member of NATO. So yeah, Finland and Sweden, not members of NATO. One sec, water. What has been interesting is in the last month, the polls, actually in the last several months, the polls have gone from something like 1/3 of the population in Sweden and Finland wanting to join NATO for years, for 20 years, only 1/3 wanted to join NATO. Then when the war started, it was, I want to say 53% or so. Both countries were around the same, 53%. And now it's in the 60 percentile of the citizens who want to join NATO from those countries. Very interesting. Now, I'm not sure, NATO is being very careful right now because they don't want to antagonize Putin more. Having said that, there's a lot of concern about Russia going after Poland or Russia going after the Baltic states that are part of NATO. Russia going after Sweden, Russia going after Finland especially, right? Which God knows they've done historically. Where things are right now, I don't see us, even if they were to ask us, I don't see us having them join us in a fast track, because I think NATO would be worried about it upsetting things. Russia, uses a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine, and you could see immediate acceptance. I don't know whether physically it's possible in the way NATO works, but you could see both countries say, we want to join NATO now, and NATO say, you're there. So I think let's see what happens, but I think it's holding off a little bit right now. Scroll down. Oh boy, Jogen. I think we said Jogen. Yes. I heard that NATO troops are on ready alert or something like that. I'm not sure what that could mean. Yeah, I think what I had heard today was, I don't think it means much. What I heard today, the big thing they were saying, we are on alert or whatever. We've activated this force we have. Oh, and thank you, Daniel, for that. We activated this force we have for responding to weapons of mass destruction. In other words, chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. And NATO has this rapid action force that jumps into action and can quickly just determine if there has been okay, nuclear is a little more obvious, right? If nuclear goes off, but chemical and biological weapons, they need to do a little bit of investigating to see. And this force we've activated is now ready to go to see if there have been any of these weapons used. And then if they have been used, to determine what the response needs to be. How do we help Ukraine? How do we stop it from blowing over into Poland or whatever? That was the big story I saw today in terms of readiness and how NATO had never activated that before. And somehow that sent a very strong message to Russia. And I was reading it going, that didn't send a strong message to Russia. I'm sorry. For my taste, that didn't send a strong. I'm glad we activated it, that we've got these folks ready in case there is a chemical or biological attack, right? That they're ready to go and investigate and see, is it real? Where is it going? Is it going to hurt any the other European countries? But the idea that this somehow scares Putin, that in essence, we've put our firefighters on. I feel like we've put our firefighters and our emergency ambulance people on notice, right? That if there's this thing we need to do something about. Hubris is Greek. Look at me. I should know that. I'm sorry. The Greek, everyone's getting on me for not knowing the word hubris was Greek. Okay. Sorry. So ignore me. So yeah, anyway, there you go. I'm not too worried about it. I think now NATO, mind you, has been beefing up its forces anyway. We've been moving more American troops into Europe, another 20,000 in the last month or two, or in the last several months, I should say, because of concerns about Russia. We've also been moving more of our troops to the front lines closer to Russia so that they're there to hopefully deter an attack on Poland or Scandinavia, right? I wouldn't, if anything, I would feel more comforted hearing that our troops are more on alert. That just makes me more comforted because it means we are more ready to respond to Russia, and Russia knows it's going to be harder to invade. So I wouldn't worry about that. Lori Keene. Lori, fed up of hearing World War III and nuclear threats. I am too. Biden's being a bit of a wet wipe, in my opinion. That's a good expression. Putin has us by the short and curlies with his threats. I think he does. I've said this before, that the Soviets before, I had studied the Soviet Union in graduate school. That was what one studied back then when the Soviet Union still existed. And I did a lot of my work in law school and graduate school at Georgetown looking at the Soviet Union. And then literally I graduated and the whole thing blew up and disappeared. And it was kind of like, well, that was an expertise gone. One thing the Soviets loved to do was scare us about nuclear weapons and scare us about the nuclear threat. And they always would talk about, I was telling somebody today in the comments on TikTok, because we were a young woman in Moscow got fined like almost $500 for putting on her backpack the word war. I think it's Voina in Russian, maybe the word war with a line through it, meaning no war. And below it, and she literally just did it with tape on her backpack, the word mir, which is peace. Now, in Russian, miru mir means world peace, because the same word for world and peace. And when I visited the Soviet Union, everything was miru mir, like these big billboards. They were all for world peace. And their version of world peace, of course, was the West doing everything they wanted. They could oppress their people and oppress the world. And if we didn't, it was going to be nuclear war. So at the same time, the Russians were the big, oh my God, we want world peace everywhere. They were always threatening nuclear war, which kind of is a contradiction, you'd think. And it's what they're doing today. This is, as far as I'm concerned, I'll say two things. One, it is a Russian talking point to try to always scare you about nuclear war, which is why I don't like Biden and others talking about World War III. I think it is a Russian talking point, and frankly, it reinforces the notion that not only should we not help Ukraine, but I would argue it reinforces the notion that we shouldn't help Poland, Baltic countries, or NATO either, because if it's World War III, if we get involved with war with the Russians, then let's not get involved with war with the Russians, right? If they invade Poland, it's World War III, so let's let them take Poland. I mean, to me, this World War III argument is an appeasement argument. I don't like it. I will say that obviously they're a nuclear power and we are nuclear powers. So if we get into war with each other, there is always the risk of it getting to a nuclear level. So that is a legitimate concern. But all this talk about nuclear war has been just kind of pissing me off at this point, I must say. I think we've bought into their arguments. Now, let me jump on some TikTok questions because I've been avoiding you folks. Sorry. Well, somebody, people have asked this. So one tired mom says, with how poorly Russia is doing in Ukraine, I wonder how overstated their nuclear power is, meaning their nuclear weapons. It's funny. We've been talking about that amongst ourselves, and then I saw somebody weighing in publicly about it and saying the same thing, that not surprisingly, nuclear weapons have to be checked. There's a lot of wiring. The wiring can rust or corrode or whatever, happens. I'm not a nuclear weapons expert, but I'm assuming there's technology involved. And just like the technology on your fridge, your refrigerator, or the technology on your computer or your phone, it can break. After a while, it breaks. So you do wonder if all of these Russian nuclear weapons are in as good of condition as their military overall. The problem is there's no way to know. So you have to take it seriously and assume that they are working, because there's just no way to know. And if we're wrong, we shouldn't be making decisions based on the notion that Russia's nukes don't work, so let's do whatever we want. We have to assume their nukes work. So it's an interesting question, but I don't think it changes our policies. That's interesting. This is an interesting question, because I actually read up on this yesterday. Sir Lionheart, I love these names, asks on TikTok, how hard would it be for the Russian chain of command to not listen, in other words, the Russian military, to not listen to orders if Putin wants to use nukes? So I was reading about this the other day and then reading what some people were saying. So even though apparently, not surprisingly, just like in the US, Russia has got like a nuclear football. We call it the nuclear football in America. It's the suitcase that military aid is always carrying near Biden, and it's got the nuclear launch codes and all of this. In Russia, they've got a similar suitcase. I was reading, it doesn't quite contain codes. It's a different system. And Putin has to call like some general, and the general gives the orders to the other generals, so that there is like a system in place that it's multiple men who have to do it. But from what I was reading, people were saying because it's Russia and it's basically a dictatorship, Putin kind of controls it all anyway. So the concern was that even though there are steps you've got to go through, that Putin just controls it all. And, now having said that, if you're on the other end of the phone and Putin says launch the missile, and you go, are you nuts? You could try not to, sure. But that's the same issue we have in the West. There's always been that concern or whatever about would the actual troops on the ground, push the buttons if you told them to launch the nukes. Who knows? In Russia, obviously, we would hope they wouldn't, right? That was weird today. Yeah, Murforth asks on TikTok, why do we think North Korea tested their missiles? North Korea tested some missiles today. North Korea being North Korea, they were missiles that went so high in the sky that basically proved, well, and my suspicion is they're still perfecting them, but that these missiles could launch, nuclear weapons anywhere on Earth was what I heard today, the experts saying, that's how dangerous it was what they launched today. They were trying to prove their power, that now they can nuke anybody, yay, great for North Korea. You have to wonder why North Korea is doing it now. I think North Korea is a very messed up place. Their leaders, he is nuts. Putin isn't nuts. North Korea is nuts, but he wants the attention. It's the me thing. Everyone's thinking about Putin. I do wonder because China is close to North Korea. I wonder whether China doesn't want to give us a bit of a headache. I don't know. And say, hey, my friend over there, would you like to launch a few missiles in the air and just scare everybody worldwide? I don't know. But I have a hard time believing it's totally random that North Korea did it right in the middle of this whole worldwide crisis with Russia. I think they're created. They're created. I think they're tied together. So, all right, let me look at a few more of the TikTok questions. As always, if you guys do the super chat questions, I will see your questions first. And you will also help me with donations, but I will scroll anyway those are the questions I'll do first, but I'll also scroll back here. Let me see what else we got here. Yeah, I know. So yeah, it's funny. Yeah, somebody's talking about, I wish I was paying U.S. prices for petrol, for gasoline. Yeah, I know. The U.S. has always paid like 4 times less than Europe for gasoline. Oh, you know what I forgot about? That's right. You guys told me I'm going to check my questions on. I've been looking at the scrolling questions, but I forgot to check the questions you guys actually post there. Okay, I did not see this, but I've heard about it. So Energizer Bunny asks, again, I love your freaking names here, guys. Energizer Bunny asks, what about the Russian soldier who ran over his commander with a tank? I heard about that earlier today, actually from one of you guys, I think on TikTok. I heard somebody talking about it, but I did not see anything on that. So I don't know. MT, my MT history buff buddy on YouTube is often up on a lot of things. Is there anything on that? I'm asking on TikTok just because it scrolls a little more slow. TikTok, excuse me. On YouTube, it scrolls a little more slowly, so often I can read the comments on YouTube a little bit better. If anybody's heard anything about this, about a Russian soldier running over his commander with a tank. As I said, heard about it, but if it were true, I feel like it would be bigger in the news, and I haven't been hearing about it at all. I only heard it from you guys. Like, why wouldn't that be the top story on CNN? Why on Twitter, I'm following about 60 or 70 military and strategic, like people following Russia in the war. They would have been all over that if it were true. It doesn't mean they're not looking into it and they don't have any proof yet, so they're not reporting on it. Maybe that's the thing. Now, I will mention this briefly because this is actually kind of funny. IGDF on TikTok asks, your opinion about Biden's son in Ukraine. So get this. I'm going to get rid of the question a second just so I can see all you guys on TikTok there. Russia puts out today, this is actually pretty hilarious. And I will say, to Biden's credit, this shows that Biden is really ticking off Putin. The Russians come out today and say, this is great. We have found proof that Joe Biden's son, Hunter, right? Hunter Biden, who's the Machiavelli of the world. Hunter Biden secretly financed, and I may have gotten this conspiracy theory wrong, but I think this is it. Hunter Biden secretly financed biological weapons labs in Ukraine that they were going to use to kill the Russians. And we now have proof. So not only do we have proof that the Ukrainians were preparing to kill all of Russia, but Hunter Biden was behind it. And I heard it and I just started laughing. To me, it reminds me of the kind of stuff Saddam Hussein did in Iraq. I don't know if you remember, but with the Gulf War, especially as an American, it was funny. Maybe you Europeans and the rest of you have the same experience, but Saddam Hussein would call us things. He would refer to Americans in a way and use insults in Arabic that didn't make sense in English. And he would call us, dogs was a favorite one. I mean, like dogs. Dogs here are like our family members, but he would always call us dogs. And it'd be like running dogs or dirty dogs or something. And it just, as an American, always made me laugh because I'm like, we love dogs, not as much as the French. You French like dogs more than we do, but we love dogs. And the animal references, and especially, we just don't really make those references in English. So I have to laugh. I heard them do this today and I was like, Hunter Biden is financing biological weapons labs in Ukraine to secretly kill Russians. To me, now clearly they're hoping that somebody on the far right in America will pick this up and push it, but somehow they think this is going to hurt Biden and bother him. And if I were Biden, I think Joe Biden's laughing his butt off. I think Joe Biden read that story and just had a drink and laughed because it makes me laugh. And frankly, to me, it shows it, just like with the Saddam Hussein thing, it shows the positions Putin's in, that I think he's really worried. I think he's really worried. So let me look. Those were two good. Let me go for another TikTok question since I've been doing a lot of them otherwise on Alex Jones certainly will. Yeah, exactly. Mary. Let me see. Well, that's a good question too. So Julie asks, now let me see. Can I actually pick a question? Oh, I see. Viewers will see how cool is that? Sorry, YouTube folks. After 2 to 3 weeks, I finally discovered how to highlight a question on my TikTok, just like I do on the YouTube. Hey guys, it's a learning curve here. I apologize. So Julie asks, see, every day we get a little more tech savvy. I feel like my mother, my 92-year-old mom, getting a little more tech savvy every day. So Julie asks, if they harm Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, do leaders have to act? In other words, does the world have to act and get involved in the war? That's the big question. Zelensky has been so good at his job. And I don't just mean running the country, but so good at being the leader of the country, being the Winston Churchill of Ukraine. And not just for Ukrainians, but for the world. Zelensky has single-handedly, but I'm not saying alone, his people, the bravery of the Ukrainian people has clearly won us over. But Zelensky clearly has convinced the West that he's a real leader, that he, I don't want to say he can win, because who knows who can win, but that it's worth supporting him because this is not over, right? And he's been such a powerful figure in terms of the bravery and the humanity of it that I think if the Russians end up killing him, it's going to backfire on that. It's going to make him a martyr, not just for the Ukrainians, but I think that's where you're going to see those polls in the West. I already talked about earlier how the polls are showing in America that our people want Biden to do even more to help the Ukrainians. I don't know. I suspect NATO would still not want to get involved militarily, but I think a lot of our people would say that's it. That's it. So no, I think it would be a huge mistake. I think Putin is probably livid with him. Putin probably wants to get rid of him for sure, but remove question. There you go. How cool is that? See, I learned something new. All right, guys, let me grab a question on the YouTube since I've been doing you TikTok guys for a bit. $10 per gallon of gas in Finland. Holy cow. Well, here in the States, I'd have to see the average. The average now could be $4. It was actually, people thought it was higher. The average here was only about $3.20 a gallon here. A gallon is 4 liters ish, more or less 4 liters. But now it could be higher. California is really high. A lot of the country, it's not. Somebody can Google the average. I'll bet you the average is $4. That's my guess in the States. So $10, that's more than twice. Although usually it's 4 times. So in a way, you're in better stead there. Well, okay, I'm going to look for more questions on TikTok. You guys are all talking amongst yourselves on YouTube. All right, I'm going to do the TikTok questions. All right, you TikTokers, what else you got here? Well, that's always an interesting question. Oh, let me highlight this one. A couple of you actually asked this. This is a TikTok question, so I'll read it for you YouTubers. Captain Supremio. I really do. I love pronouncing your names when it's this serious of a topic. You know what? You got to laugh. I mean, all of these kind of conversations, there's some way we've got to keep ourselves from going crazy. So Captain Supremio asks, can Putin be arrested at the G20 summit later this year because of the crimes against humanity investigation, the war crimes investigation? Now, we know that The Hague, the International Criminal Court, has assigned a prosecutor who I believe an investigator who is already in Ukraine, who is investigating whether crimes against humanity are happening, whether war crimes are happening. He's investigating the Russians. He's investigating the Ukrainians, Belarusians too, probably. But said he's not there to investigate one side, investigate everybody fairly, and that's an excellent point. The problem becomes, and I was reading up on this just the last couple of days on like what actually happens next is you've got to find enough evidence. And actually, if you think about law in your own country, it works the same way. Okay, you can prove that war crimes happened. You can prove that so many hospitals and so many civilians are getting hit that it's clearly intentional, right? That it couldn't have been a mistake, right? I mean, some of these things are obvious. The story about the tank in front of the senior center. They had a retirement home and the tank went in front of it and blew it up. Okay, that wasn't a mistake, right? So we know that. The problem becomes for going after war crimes is who are you charging with the crime? You have to prove that the person knew about it and ordered it, approved it, or whatever. Now, as you move up the chain of command, maybe you've got the troops on the ground, okay? And first you've got to find witnesses and things. So you've got to find people who survived to tell, people who are willing to testify, et cetera. Then you have to find out who were the troops in the area that you are even issuing an arrest warrant for, or an indictment, whatever you want to call it, but an arrest warrant for these troops. Well, now let's get higher up, the generals, or even Putin. How do you prove that Putin knew about the various different attacks? So it gets much more difficult, I was reading, for war crimes to get the senior, unfortunately, to prove that the senior leaders had knowledge of the individual acts that were happening on the ground. But you never know. It could. And maybe somebody would turn against Putin. Now, if Putin were to get overthrown, the military could say, this guy just destroyed our country. Hague, take him away, and we're going to give you all the evidence you need to put this guy in jail for the rest of his life. Who knows? But that becomes the problem. So the issue isn't even yet one of could Putin be arrested when he goes to Indonesia for the G20 if he goes. It's will they have enough of a case to charge him, but also what I've read, it could take years for them to put the case together. And again, that kind of makes sense too. If you think in our own countries, this kind of an investigation would be years of putting together the investigation, right? Now Katie Burke asks, what happens if the prosecutor gets killed? Well, yeah. Well, I mean, if the prosecutor gets killed, you get another prosecutor. Hopefully the prosecutor's smart enough in a war zone that he's backing up his information, right? I mean, just on a simple point of it, you'd keep computer copies, you'd have multiple copies, you'd probably get online every day and ship your information off to a cloud or something, and so that if you get killed, your data, your interviews, they're all there. And you're probably not the only person, so maybe you're there with a team. And every night, if you're sending your information back, then your team back at The Hague is getting all of your information. So it would be bad if you got killed, of course. And then that might be another war crime, but I don't think it would cause any problem with the investigation. I don't think so. Let me look here. I'll get rid of that question and I will look for another TikTok question. I'm loving this TikTok question thing, guys. I apologize for not. I will say what I've been doing with TikTok till now is I would read through your questions flying by. I did not know that I could actually see this, by the way. So thank you. Oh, and I will mention to the moderators, by the way, on TikTok and YouTube, if you see somebody who's an obvious troll, somebody obviously horrific troublemaker, just block them. Don't give them 5 minutes, because 5 minutes means you got to deal with them in 5 minutes. If it is obviously somebody who is here to cause trouble and they're not just somebody who got upset, then block them totally. It makes it easier for everybody. Okay, depends who you mean. Davis Cleaned asks, some questions I will get you on YouTube next, but on TikTok, Davis asks, what about Putin's right-hand men who are missing? There's a couple different stories going on about people who are missing. The defense minister has been missing for about 2 weeks now, the Russian defense minister, what was very close to Putin. Obviously, Putin right now, you think, might not be too thrilled with his defense minister because the Russians are really doing badly in Ukraine. He popped up today. Putin did like some national security meeting or whatever by Zoom or whatever they use there. And the defense minister, and what's interesting to me is the camera intentionally showed the screen so you could see the defense minister pop up in the corner of the screen for like 4 seconds. And the problem is a lot of observers are saying that could have just been a recording, that they just literally put the record up, a recording of the guy, a video recording of the guy up there to make it look like he's still alive and still around. The guy's been missing for 2 weeks. He's the minister of defense. It's a little strange during wartime that he's not around. And it's quite possible that he's in a dungeon somewhere after 15,000 possible Russian troops dying and 30,000 Russian troops being injured, and probably half the Russian troops having frostbite and all of them being out of food and water. And And the boat blowing up didn't help his chances either. So the other thing is there's also been, I have not seen any news about the other people. I know what you're talking about. There was the deputy head of the National Guard. Looks like he got arrested or resigned, whatever. There were some intelligence chiefs that were in trouble. So that was news from several days ago, but I've not seen anything new on that. The big thing going on, which actually you guys brought to my attention a few days ago, is it Shoigu? Because I didn't actually know the defense minister's name a few days ago, but Shoigu. It's still a little suspicious what's going on with him. Now, let's see. Richard asks, I'll pull that question off. Hold on, just remove question. There we go. Richard Fisher asks, if Russia overthrows Putin, would the world say turn him over and we'll lift the sanctions on Russia? Yes, but the world would say turn him over with the proof, get out of Ukraine, give all the land back, and for the next 10 years, you're going to be paying a lot of money to rebuild Ukraine, I think. It wouldn't just be turn him over and the sanctions are gone. Russia, these are war crimes. And it's not just war crimes in terms of they've killed a lot of people and need to be held responsible. The Russians have intentionally destroyed this country. They've caused, I didn't even see what the estimates are of damage, but they have wiped out entire towns. But some like Mariupol in the south, they've just literally, the town's dead. It's full of living people, but the town is gone. They need to be held accountable for that in terms of rebuilding stuff, I think. So, but if they overthrew Putin, I don't think it would be. It might not be a long negotiation, but clearly they'd have to give all the land back to the Ukrainians for starters. That would be the beginning of it. And you'd probably have to have security guarantees too, so NATO knows this isn't going to happen again. And I don't know what that means, but Elon Musk probably has all of Putin's emails, texts backed up somewhere. God willing, and I like the little sunflower. That was a very cute touch there, being Nancy. What else we got here, questions-wise, guys? No. Scott asked, interesting question, though, from Scott McNabb. If Ukraine snapped an election and requested Ukraine, in other words, if Ukraine requested UN election monitoring, would that not bypass NATO? Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's kind of funny. Okay, that's kind of funny. So I think what Scott is getting at is Ukraine should call an election and say, "Oh, we want the United Nations election monitors there to help make sure our election's fair. And we're just going to happen to have those election monitors from the United Nations spread all over our country. And it would sure be a shame if the Russians bombed any of them, and it meant that the UN peacekeepers had to get involved and blah, blah, blah." The UN would know what's going on. I mean, I think it's a cute idea. It's a cute idea, but I think, and frankly, at this point, you can't have elections. I mean, people can't even get to the polls in a lot of places. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of cute, though. Although what it does do is it brings up the question, which bothers me, is, why didn't we do that before? Why didn't we send peacekeepers into Ukraine before the Russians bombed? We've known for months, I don't even remember how many months back this goes, that the Russians were I mean, it could have gone back to last fall, that the Russians were bringing in their troops, and we knew there was a good chance they were going to invade. Why didn't we put in either UN peacekeepers or NATO, but especially UN? If Biden and the rest of them were afraid of it causing a war with us, then put in UN peacekeepers and dare the Russians to go blow up UN troops from all over the world if they're going to invade. Why didn't we do that? That pisses me off, and I'd like to see a better explanation from our leaders as to why we didn't. Catherine asks, 8:15, guys. I'm warning you, a couple more questions, and then we're going to happy time. An hour. I'm trying to keep it to an hour 15 of the serious stuff, just because I get very tired doing this, and I'm trying to keep my energy up so we can do it I'm committed to doing this every day, but it gets tiring. Catherine asks, how much should Russia be punished before we start having issues like Germany? That's an excellent question. Issues like Germany post-World War I. Now, I do not claim to be the World War I history expert, but I know that one of the many issues with Germany going from being beaten in World War I to Nazi Germany, then becoming the scourge of the world, is the not even the sanctions with the reparations, but the incredibly punitive sanctions we had on Germany and monetary that I'm guessing had some of the reason of why their economy was going nuts with hyperinflation and everything else. I've seen some people say there's other reasons too. Obviously it wasn't just that, but yeah, you do. You've got to. You would have to balance how much do you punish Russia and how much do you hopefully bring Russia. I mean, the ultimate goal here is to bring Russia into the community of nations. It's the same reason that Turkey, that you're talking about Turkish membership for the EU. My uncle, I can say it now because he's not around anymore, but my uncle, I've talked about here before, my Greek uncle was the Greek defense minister, foreign minister, UN ambassador, and also deputy prime minister under Papandreou back in the 1980s. His name was Yannis Charalambopoulos, and my mom's first cousin. And Theo Yanni, my uncle, had about 10 years ago, I was in Greece, and we were sitting around, he was retired. He's gone now, but he was like 90, I don't even know, 89, 90, 91 at the time. And I was asking him about Turkey and NATO. And it was very interesting because he said, we have to have Turkey and NATO. We have to. I said, what do you mean? Because I'm thinking a Greek, not NATO, the EU, the European Union. And I'm thinking, the Greeks might want Turkey out of the EU to keep them at an economic disadvantage and this. And he said, no, Turkey has got to be integrated into Europe. And the only way we're going to, and I don't remember the word he used, whether it wasn't calm down, but, have Turkey mature to the point where it's no longer a threat to Greece, is to have it be so tied into the European economy that it just becomes part of Europe. And in the end, would wish this were what happens with Russia. It was certainly something as a Russia observer and a Soviet observer back in the day that I so had hope after the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 and the freedom of Eastern Europe in 89. I really felt like this was the chance that, oh my God, Russia could finally join Europe, or start to join Europe. And I mean, I've been to Russia. It's different there. It's not quite like going to Europe. It's a little different. And they blew it. And maybe we blew it. I don't know, but they blew it. And I would like to see that happen again. So I agree. You don't want to just punish the hell out of Russia, but you also need to somehow ensure that this doesn't happen again, which is also why we've all got to worry about the appeasement factor. Every time we worry about nuclear war, we're also saying Russia will let you get away with whatever you can get away with. Now, Ryan Rardon, that's an interesting last name. It almost makes me think of Reardon, but with a shorter. Ryan says, have you heard of a game called This War of Mine? No. It's a survival game that shows what the Ukrainian civilians are going through. Not at all. I'll write it down, though. It's funny. I like war games and things like that. I don't get to play. I don't have friends who play these things. It really annoys me, This War of Mine. I, for example, am a huge fan of Dungeons & Dragons, D&D. I don't have any friends who play Dungeons & Dragons, so I don't ever play D&D. And it drives me nuts. I love that game. I don't have friends who play war games. I love my friends. No offense to anybody out there who's listening, but my friends don't play these kind of things. I need to find new friends. So I don't know it, but I wrote it down. I'll check it out. All right, guys, I'm going to do one more question. Either somebody throw a super chat question in, or I'm going to pick one at random here. And then we're going to switch over to the part of the talk where we just all hang out and chat for fun, because we've been going almost for an hour 20. I appreciate it. Okay, here's our last thing from Stephanie, and then I'll maybe close with some updates too, because also I've been doing some fundraising for helping people in Ukraine, and you can help with that. Let me do Stephanie's question first, and then I'll tell you right now. For the TikTok people, don't leave yet, but when you leave, go to my profile. You'll find the link that says Beacons. Thank you, by the way, for that. You'll find the link that says Beacons. Click on it, and among those links, you will see me mention my friend Vlad in Ukraine. He has been collecting money, and actually, I'll put it up here too for you guys on YouTube. Vlad has been, that's the link, has been collecting money for internally displaced refugees in Ukraine. He himself is one. He's from Kharkiv. He fled with his wife, his 3-year-old daughter, because obviously he didn't want them being bombed. The wife's mother and the wife's grandmother, like a whole generation. I mean, multi-generational. They're in the Ukrainian Southwest. He can't leave the country because men are not allowed to leave because of the war. The women do not want to leave him, so they're refusing to leave, and he doesn't want them staying there. But initially, they needed some help because they're refugees, and people have got to pay for housing. Like, they've still got to pay for housing there. The housing isn't free because the hotel people have got to pay their bills too, right? It's kind of like the Depression where one person can't pay and then the other person can't pay. So anyway, you guys donated. You helped out Vlad's family. We had said if you donated more than he needed, he was going to start helping other people. Well, Vlad needed like $2,000 for his family for the next month. You guys donated. So far, you're up to $14,000. He's going to give me another update tomorrow because I sent him at least $3,000 via PayPal that you guys sent me. That is taking 3 days, and I don't know why PayPal's taking time, but it is. So the final, not the final, but the updated number Vlad will have in a couple days. But he has helped multiple families now that have in need. And the really cool thing, and the reason I'm saying this again is if you can donate, please do. It's in the Beacons link that you see on my video at YouTube, but you have to type it in yourself. It is in my profile link on TikTok. If you can give directly to Vlad's PayPal, that's the easiest way. If you don't like PayPal, you can give via my Cash App and Venmo links. But put in them, thank you, by the way, put in them that it's for Vlad so I know. I have those links in there also to support my work, but I've just been assuming that all the donations are for Vlad the last week. And I can send it to him, but it's easier just to do PayPal directly to Vlad. But what he showed me yesterday, which was very cool, actually, I should tomorrow maybe I'll grab some of the pictures just to show you guys because they've got an Instagram account. Kharkiv, I told you this, the second largest city where Vlad's from, 1.5 million people in that city, second largest city in Ukraine, and it has been under Russian bombardment for weeks. I mean, this is one of the cities the Russians are trying to destroy. And this is the town where at the beginning of the show, I said something like 70% of the people in the town are on food aid, that they can't get food. So the government is having to get them food. Well, there's a group there, among others, that Vlad knows them, and some of your donations went to help buy and prepare food for people in Kharkiv and get them clothing. There's a group that's making the food, and they've got wonderful pictures on Instagram, almost like a catering business, in essence, they've created, where they're making free food for people, but they've got to buy the food and get the food, making free food and collecting clothing and then delivering it to people. And imagine you're delivering this. I mean, in bombs dropping, delivering. And just amazing work these guys are doing. And so anyway, part of your donations went to help that group in Kharkiv. So if you want to keep donating, please do. I'm not taking any of it anyway. But if you give it to, and Vlad isn't either, but if you send it to Vlad directly via PayPal, I just wanted to give you the story because before I answer the question, because that to me is like the most important thing we can do. If you guys, I want to keep finding ways of helping them over there. I was actually reading a story today, by the way, as well, since we're sort of, and I will do that last question real quick. But I was reading a story today that some of the Ukrainians have actually been complaining about the aid organizations and saying that the aid isn't getting there, that it's too bureaucratic, it's taking way too long, that in essence, they were getting, and I read this and I didn't laugh, I was thinking of us, you guys, that a number of Ukrainians are saying that the aid that's getting to them more quickly are people who raised money for them individually and sent it to them. And basically the kind of stuff we did. Now, I wish that weren't true. And I'm sure some of the aid groups, we know some of the aid groups are doing a great job in Poland, for example, when the Ukrainians cross over. But nonetheless, apparently it has been a problem. So anyway, wonderful that you guys did it. You know, we can only help so many families with $15,000, but that's still because Vlad, okay, I'll stop with this and get to the question. For example, Vlad's hotel, for his hotel room that was wife, daughter, him, wife's mom, wife's grandma, all of them in a hotel room, was costing $100 a night. It still is. And now they're trying to get a place like further out of town. They're in a small town, but that's how much it costs, because the town was 100,000 people. It's now 300,000 people because of the refugees, and the prices have gone through the roof. And everybody wants cash. They don't want credit. So now everyone has to use cash, but PayPal works as cash because the PayPal debit card, it works as cash, I guess. So very cool. Anyway, that was a little too long. That was a long way of saying thank you guys for helping. And if you can still help Vlad help the other folks, that would be totally cool. Now, let me find that last question I saw pop up. Was it Stephanie? It was Stephanie. And then after that, we are going to close up. Thank you for that. We're going to close up shop after this, and then I'm just going to hang, because once again, I broke my promise. We're going on an hour and 25 minutes of substance. This is the last question, and then we're going to hang and chat for a few minutes. Zelensky said he no longer wishes to join NATO. Could that change? If so, would they be able to join with how much of Ukraine is demolished? Well, okay, first of all, it would be obnoxious as hell of NATO to say, oh gosh, your country is in such ruins, we don't want you, when the country is in such ruins because Ukraine wanted to join NATO 14 years ago and we said no. And part of the reason we said no was because Ukraine's military just wasn't up to snuff. They needed to improve their military. But then we turned around and we let former Yugoslavian governments or countries from former Yugoslavia join NATO, and some of them petitioned to join and be on a track to join NATO when their militaries are nothing compared to the military of Ukraine. It would be a little disingenuous. NATO didn't want Ukraine because they were afraid of ticking off Russia. And again, that bothers me. I don't blame Zelensky. I think Zelensky, if anything, right now saying, I don't even want NATO, it benefits Zelensky in a few ways. One, it probably doesn't hurt to keep putting pressure on NATO to give more supplies, to let NATO, for example, Zelensky's more popular in our country's, I guarantee you he's more popular than Biden. I mean, Biden's popularity is in the 40 percentile. Zelensky's got to be higher than that. Zelensky's probably more popular than most of our presidents and prime ministers, I would bet. that. So when he says, I'm disappointed in your governments and I don't even want to join you now, that makes our population say, oh, right, the poll I talked about earlier, we want you to do more to help him. That's the first thing. Secondly, that's an interesting message for Zelensky to put out there, to start signaling to Russia that this whole NATO thing isn't a problem. Now, the Russians claim they invaded to stop Ukraine from joining NATO. As we said, Ukraine's wanted to join NATO for 14 years. It was going nowhere. It was a lie. what the Russians said. The Russians invaded because they've always wanted to take Ukraine as part of Russia, and Putin even said it. Having said that, this still allows Zelensky to throw something out that potentially gives Putin a fig leaf to say, let's pretend they do work out a deal. See, Ukraine now has given up its desire to join NATO. We accomplished our goals. I mean, if that's what Zelensky has to give up to get the country back, that's not such a big thing to give up now because he's not joining NATO right now anyway, right? But it's not enough. He's got to get all the land back. At least he's got to get all the land back, and I still think Russia's got to pay reparations. All right, that is it for questions. Yes, thank God nobody else bought a question, so I didn't feel guilty. All right, guys, I'm sitting around and we'll just talk for a few minutes. We're already at the 1:26 mark, though, hour and 25 minutes, so I'm probably not going to talk too much longer because I'm tired. And as I said, I've got to have more discipline and keep these to an hour, but it's hard because it's fun and I think it's important. So, but anyway, yes, my YouTubes are back. Oh God. Somebody asked, now that's a good question. Gabs asked my favorite D&D class and race. So I like playing elves and I like being mages or something of that sort. I like being magical. It's funny actually because that more interests me anyway. I'm more into Harry Potter than I am first-person shooter games. Like my nephews like to play the games. What's it called? I'm sure the girls love it too. All the boys love it. That Call of Duty and all those games, loves them. I've hated those games. They're war games. You walk around with your machine gun. I don't want a machine. I want spells. I don't want machine guns. So that's what I've always liked. And just to remind folks, we're at the part now where we stopped talking about politics and now we're hanging out just for fun for a few minutes. So I apologize if you wonder why we're talking about being wizards on Dungeons and Dragons. What else we got? 5-year campaign. Oh my God. Wow. No, keep me in mind. Of course, I haven't played this in years, but I love playing that stuff. Just looking here. What else we got here, guys? Yes, the Russians. Yeah, Tara. Tara came by. Tara, who's one of our moderators who was helping us with you guys on TikTok, is back over on YouTube. And it's true. It's funny. We have so many, I say pro-Russian trolls to be nice, but they're clearly Russian trolls on TikTok. We don't get them here, but I don't want to jinx it by saying it. But maybe YouTube does a better job. But boy, the Russians are not happy about my TikTok account. Man. Boy, every time I put something up, they're just, and the thing is, you can always tell it's them too, though, because the English is never perfect. It's never perfect. So it's never, they pretend to be Americans, but the English is never perfect. So you're kind of like, okay, seriously? Give me a break. But yeah, they get very upset. And now the latest thing they've been doing is trying to claim they're winning the war. And I mean, at this point, you're kind of like, guys, seriously. Obviously, you've got a lot of weapons that can hurt a lot of people, but it's not like you're winning this war yeah, go team. But they still do that in the comments. My theory, which I think, not theory, but my idea, which I think is interesting, is I wonder whether the Russian trolls, whether the paid Russians who have to come and sow all these comments trying to confuse us, whether they could turn against Putin because they are some of the Russians who are getting to read all the real news. In order for them to come into my feed on TikTok, they've got to come and watch my video of that Russian warship blowing up this morning. They know that ship blew up. They're seeing it's real. They're seeing the videos of Russian tanks getting blown up. They're seeing the Ukrainians driving around, the Ukrainian tractors driving around with all the Russian equipment. You wonder in the long term for them, whether some of them aren't kind of like, why am I here? But who knows? I'm not too worried about it though. But, oh, hello, Marianne. Hello from Philippines. Thanks for these updates. Thank you, Marianne. That's sweet of you. Here, I'll just highlight you just to thank you. Oh, I'm tired, guys. I'm still sleepy. I had some nose surgery. Oh, from India. Oh, wow. Hi, India. People were buying tickets. Somebody just mentioned on TikTok, people were buying tickets for the zoo in Ukraine. Friend of mine, Maxime, was promoting that the other day. At one point, but basically, I don't have the link in front of me, but if anybody does, feel free to put it in the comments, either on TikTok or here. But you want to make sure it's the real link, of course. But people were buying tickets at the local zoos just to raise money for them. Now I did that with Airbnb when this first started. I booked, actually, this is my week, I think. This is my week. I've been getting Airbnb updates. I've been staying in Kharkiv all week on Airbnb. I have a $15 a night room. I've got it for the entire week through next Sunday. Anybody in Kharkiv, I guess I probably should let you know so you can take my room. But I paid $100 for the room on Airbnb and just helped some local guy. And, anyway, it was nice to do. And a lot of you guys, I actually put it on, at that point, we might have just been doing TikTok. I remember a lot of you guys on TikTok did it. You jumped in and said you did it, which was wonderful of you. Yeah, very nice. Well, I'll say this, by the way, too, because somebody mentioned a lot of the trolls are Trumpsters. Many of they're Trump supporters. Don't be so sure because that's cute. Don't be so sure because I think a lot of the Russians, one of the things the Russians are most upset about is that Americans came together. I mean, that the West came together, that NATO came together, that we're all unified, and that especially America's been unified. We haven't been very unified the last 4 or 5 years, right? And on this topic, Americans are really unified, and we're ticked at Russia, and we're supportive of Ukraine. The Russians can't like that. And one thing I've noticed popping up in the comments, particularly on TikTok, is a lot of it. It's very weird, but you'll see people just try to start fights about Biden or Trump. And they're clearly trying to get Democrats and Republicans to get mad at each other. Or I've seen people jump in and try to start fights about guns and go, this is why we need the Second Amendment to stop Ukraine from happening in America. And basically, I'm sorry, but as soon as I see that, I see somebody playing a game who's trying to get you angry and to start a fight about guns because they know Democrats and Republicans in America will fight about guns and whether we should have guns or not have guns. So it's a cute way of making us all fight and take sides on an issue where we all agree. So I would not necessarily be so sure. I would not. I think you probably have some people from the far right that are here to cause trouble, some people from the extreme far left that are here to cause trouble, who are, basically Putin supporters again on both sides, and you've got a lot of Russians who are here to cause trouble. But exactly. Some BB just said chaos agents. Exactly. I think you've got people who are here to sow trouble, and I think that's the thing to always keep in mind. YouTube too, but especially on TikTok, because I'll see it on my videos, and I'll see you guys on TikTok say to somebody like, "How can you say that?" Most of the time when you're saying, how can you say that? They can say it because they're being paid to say it. That's why they're being so dumb or uninformed or mean or something, is because they're probably being paid. So just keep it in mind, but don't fall for it. Like I said, this has been nice that we've been able to have such a coming together of folks politically. And as I said, I hope in Europe it's been the same thing, but I suspect it really has been. I suspect it really is. The people have been pretty good. Oh, what else, guys? I'll give you another couple minutes, and then I'm going to, as I always do, go back to my vampire show and take a break. And actually, I'm going to make, even though I shouldn't, because I lost a little of my COVID weight. I visited my mom for 2 months over the holidays, over Christmas. And I'm actually going to be visiting her at Easter too. So I'm going to be broadcasting from Mom's place, which means I'm going to have to pack up my microphone. I'm going to have to decide if I buy a ring light for Mom's place. I do not have the setup I have here. It may be a little more stark. I tried to at least make it interesting with my room in the background so you guys could see it, just to make it a little more personal and interesting. But so we'll see what happens at Mom's. But why was I thinking of Mom's? Something at Mom's I was thinking of with this. I don't know. I'm tired. Oh, but Mom's. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was at Mom's for 2 months. I lost like 5 pounds, I think, at Mom's, because just eating healthily at Mom's, and Mom doesn't have the desserts that I have, like a never ending supply of chocolate here. Thanks, by the way, to Casey, one of you, who sent me even more chocolate, but I also had my own chocolate sitting here, and that's always a risk for me. And I've got a recipe, which I said I'm going to share with you guys one of these days. I'll do a TikTok occasionally, my recipes, but I've got a recipe for mug cake that actually turned out pretty good. And it's a pretty good recipe where, you make a cake in a coffee mug, but I mistakenly didn't add oil to it once, and it turned out really good. So now it's an oilless mug cake, which means it's actually pretty healthy. Other than the chocolate that's in it, it's pretty healthy, So we'll see about, let me see here. Greektown. Oh, I've never been to Toronto. Tony said, I hope you get to visit Greektown in Toronto. We have Taste of Greece every summer. Oh, most multicultural city in the world. I have been to Canada. I love Canada, but I've only gone to bizarre places in Canada, so to speak. Not bizarre, but I've been to the Boundary Waters fishing with my family when my dad was a big fisherman and brought us up fishing a lot. And I went fishing with friends and then with my family as well, different times. And on the Canadian side of the waters north of Minnesota, beautiful camping on the islands, really nice. The famous story there, which I don't remember, but my mom telling me, I was like probably 6 years old or something, and we're in the boat, and we would have a little motor boat, like one of those little boats that you could row that had a motor on it, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I asked my dad. My mom was there. She goes, "You asked Dad, like, I've got to go pee. Can we go to the land so I can pee?" And my dad said, "Just do it over the edge of the boat." And I said, "Over the edge of the boat? That's the same water you've got us drinking." Because at night with dinner or the morning, he said, "Just get water out of the lake and you can drink it from your hands." And that's my memory of Canada camping, was telling my dad, "I'm not peeing in that water." But I also went to a conference when I was working in the U.S. Senate at Kananaskis out in Banff in Alberta, and then went skiing, which was great fun there. And I've been to Ottawa. When I was working at the UN, we had a conference of something in Ottawa, and I really liked it. I was people don't really talk about visiting Ottawa up until recently, but I liked it. It was I thought it was a very pretty city. The people were very nice. I liked being able to go across the river to Gatineau, which is the little French Quarter, and I could use my French in the restaurants and all of that. It was just it was fun. But I've never been to Toronto. I've heard Toronto is wonderful. I am dying to go to Montreal, obviously, because I speak French. But I didn't even know there was a Greek town. So yeah, I will let you all know when I finally get there. With COVID too, I haven't been doing anything with COVID. I'm still a bit of a COVID chicken. I've been a little nervous about being afraid to kind of not travel, but yeah, I've just been careful. Partially because my mom, she's old now. She's 92. So I go visit her probably 4 times a year. And each time I go, I stay at least a month, so I'm seeing Sasha. Yes, Sasha, I think, is in the bedroom because she's punishing me because I didn't remember at 7:30, an hour ago, Sasha was in her bed begging me to come over and cover her with a sheet because Sasha has trained me from an early age. I don't know how. She makes noises. She does vocalizations for different things she wants. And whenever she wants to be covered by a blanket, she has a specific sound she makes. And I kid you not, it means, "I can't get the blanket. Will you cover me with it?" And she did it when I was talking to you guys. I looked over. What do you know? She's in her bed, and the blanket wasn't in the bed. The blanket was on the floor next to the bed because I know my mom thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, "Mom, I know my dog. She talks. I know what she wants." So Sasha's blanket is still on the floor over there. It's not on the bed. So Sasha got a little pissed off at me and went into the bedroom. So she has sought one of her other 4 beds, not counting my own bed, which is also a bed. And last night, of course, we had a thunderstorm at midnight. You may have seen my videos about Sasha getting scared about the rain yesterday. She finally calmed down. Midnight, we had a thunderstorm. So I had to deal with the dog in the bathroom shaking at midnight. And the funniest part is I love thunderstorms. Weather, thunder and lightning, I am in heaven. Makes me joyous. And my dog hates them. So I've become this weird parent where for the last 12 years, I've no longer been able to enjoy thunderstorms because I know the dog's going to get, but it scares you. It's horrible. I'm reading some of you guys comment. It's just horrible when the dogs are scared, I know I've got to show let me see. Well, hold on a second. YouTube guys is going to be a little too hard. The folks on TikTok asked, I will walk over really quick to see my, can I turn the camera? I don't think so. I will just show you up really quick. Hold on. I'm going to show the TikTok folks want to see my panorama of France back there. So this is a panorama I made of, but it goes back and forth, of the courtyard at the Louvre. And I did it, 10 plus years ago with about 18 photos. So it's about 3 rows of photos going down and about 6 rows of photo going across. And again, it's probably, I guess you could see if I get really close. What's neat is, it's really quite detailed because it's so many photos. And I love that. Hopefully you guys can still hear there. I just love it. I love photography anyway. And I've I studied in France, and I worked in France. I mean, all sorts of things. And then I did my video the other day trying to prove to you all that I spoke French. And you may all have been impressed, but every language I spoke was horrific in that video because I got scared. Speaking foreign languages is very nerve-wracking when you're on video. So I did a very bad job. My French is actually very fluent, even though in the video it was a little choppy. But anyway, yeah, I love France. Paris to me is a second home. It feels like a second home. So I wanted something anyway, and that was like the perfect thing. I love that. I love that thing. But anyway, all right, guys. I'm going to sign off. Thank you for this all. This has been great. And again, thank you for all of the donations for Vlad, and I remind folks on, the YouTubers, you guys know, every time you do the super chat and every time you do the super sticker, that's a donation for me. So thank you so much. And on TikTok, I said yes. Oh, bonsoir à vous aussi. I've said on TikTok before to folks that some of the folks get upset. It's cute. I've had some people, and I understand it, but I have some people on TikTok who get upset because on TikTok, any of you YouTubers may not know, they can put like, my favorite, of course, is the sorting hat from Harry Potter. They can put the sorting hat on my head. They've got sunglasses you can wear. There's this baseball hat, and it fits virtually, so you move your head, and it's kind of cool. But when we're talking about a serious topic like war, some of the viewers get upset that you guys are putting things on my head and stuff. And there we go, the sorting hat. Somebody just did it. I love it. My nephew took a great picture of the glasses on me. My first live I did on YouTube, on TikTok. Somebody put the glasses on my face, the sunglasses, and my nephew got a photo, and I've got it. It's in my phone, but it's a great picture of me like with this glass. In any case, somebody got upset about it. They thought it was almost disrespectful. And I was trying to explain, A, I love that thing. It's TikTok. B, it's a donation. I mean, when folks do this, they're actually giving money to help support me, which is really helpful because I'm doing this full time. So I think, and I want to keep doing. I mean, God, if I could make this a full-time job, just doing news updates for you guys. I mean, let's hope the war. One of the Russian trolls actually went after me and said it was today or yesterday, and said, what did he say? How did he say this? What will you do with this channel when the war is over? And I wrote it back and I said, surrender. Let's find out. Which I'm sorry, I thought was pretty good. But I would love to turn this into a kind of thing where I can just do sort of daily news updates in general. It could be international. We could stick to international. I don't know. But I was talking to my nephew because my nephew often joins in just to watch and stuff. And he's my aide de politique. We talk politics together. But I would love it if there were a way of doing this kind of stuff where we could talk politics without it being political, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, I like the fact that we've only got kind of the extremists or the Russians who are getting who are on the other side of this that we're doing right now. And good night, everybody. You don't have to hang out. I'm just sort of wrapping up anyway right now. If you got to go, please don't worry. But I like that we've got a way of talking about this in a way that's interesting and informative. And I've got to figure out if there's some way once the war is over that we can keep doing that in a way where we talk about politics and maybe world politics or something in a way that's informative but isn't political. And I don't know how you do that because it's hard, and especially, American politics, I don't know that it's even possible. I just don't know. I mean, you could try, but even for me, it would be hard to keep it apolitical. Whereas this, yeah. Oh yeah. Tomorrow, I didn't say that. Yes. Tomorrow, 7:00, we'll do the same thing, 7 p.m. Eastern time, US. That should still be 2300 UTC. UTC is 4 hours ahead of Washington, D.C. So 7 p.m. Eastern, Washington, D.C. On the weekend, we'll shoot for 1:00 on Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, US. That would be 1700 UTC on Saturday. And that will hopefully make it easier for the Europeans. And I can schedule them now. I mean, once we finish, I schedule it immediately anyway on TikTok, on YouTube and Facebook and everything. I now can schedule, because TikTok fixed it. Thank you, TikTok. I now can schedule my lives on TikTok. So first I could just do them, but now I can schedule them. So there will actually be the scheduled live within a couple minutes. So you can always click on that too. I'm a silver fox. Thank you. I'm not happy I'm going silver, but what do you think? Yeah, I'd rather have the hat high my silver. What do you do? Everybody whose hair is going gray, everybody thinks it looks nice on you. And to you, you're like, ugh, hair, gray. But what do you do? Men, at least, thank God. Men, because society is so prejudiced and biased, men, at least, we get complimented on gray more than women do. So I guess I've got that, but nonetheless. And Tara, thank you for that as well. All right, guys, I'm signing off. Chocolate is beckoning me. My voice is beckoning me. We've done an hour 45. I think we've gone far enough. All right, guys. Tomorrow, like I said, 7 o'clock. I will set both of these up right now. So if you check out my accounts in the next 15 minutes, you will see these ready to go so you can click them to remind yourselves. Thank you again. Great talk. And again, pretty positive news today. Let's hope it keeps up. But, as things go, pretty relatively good news day. Last minute classes. Thank you. All right, guys. I'm hanging up on TikTok. Boom. And now I'm going to hang up on YouTube. Bye, YouTube.